Hey guys, tonight we continue once again. The pause inside the chamber holds like a breath I can feel in my ribs. The rope cool around my wrist as if reminding me it will follow whichever choice I make. The mirror in the chest still shows the basalt map with that single eye square pulsing. And the pool beside me holds its skin of water too still to be honest. I collect the half loaf, the coil, the tiny amphora, and the mirror, setting them in a line like notes on a staff, then rest the bronze eye in my palm. Its hum is soft as a wasp against glass. The warm seed in my pocket answers, and I know this city understands call and response better than most choirs. I leave the chest open because shutting it would feel like telling a story where the ending is already nailed in. And let the rope draw me to a narrow passage I had not seen a moment ago. Our old trick, a corridor flickering with the same 7 symbols in no predictable order. Bees tucked into corners like commas. The air steeped in fennel and that metallic tang of polished bronze that keeps reminding me of coins and mirrors and tools all at once. The walls show little reliefs of hands doing useful things, tying knots, tallying grain, guiding a child's fingers across a wax tablet, and in the last panel a palm cradles an eye, which is either encouragement or a contract, mainstream anchor for the nerves. Grain tallies mattered everywhere Rome went, stamped loaves, bread doles, ledgers. The quiet machinery of habit. Ostias Horea stacked with Amphorae and sealed warehouses. Stone logic designed to outlast panic. Fringe whisper riding the same breath. Some families believed their Lararia would remember for them if they fed the right token on the right night. A private calendar hung on the wall of the world. I pass into a low rotunda where 7 small fountains spit thin threads into a central bowl, each thread falling on a different count. And when I hold the bronze eye over the water, their beats align for a single, satisfying moment before drifting apart again. A kind of ritual metronome that does not need my consent. Historians still debate whether domestic water clocks did real timekeeping or performed the idea of time. Unequal hours sliding with the seasons versus the tidy modern clock we want to project backward. Yet here the drip decides the pace for both of us. I follow the rope along a stair veering toward the surface and come out beneath an arcade I have crossed before. Only this time the mirrors set high under the eaves send a true sliver of daylight across the paving. Borrowed from somewhere improbable, a heliostat in everything but name. Clever Roman trickery with polished bronze and angles. The beam lands on a brass plate cut with a shallow palm and a line of laurel. I settle the bronze eye there and feel the plate warm. Then cool, like a handshake, and the beam skitters away toward the far wall where a seam opens to admit the narrowest of doors. Beyond it the air turns briny as rope tar and the floor dips until the city becomes a quiet port again. Drowned but tidy, keys smooth from centuries of ghosts docking on time. The calendar cut in the stone has taken my sealed seed and smoothed the week, which does not feel like magic so much as accounting, light joke one to keep the jaw unclenched. Somewhere a very stern bookkeeper nodded and no one saw. The rope kisses my ankle and directs me to a platform where a frame waits, pulley poised, and from the dark above comes the soft exhale click of the wheel paying out. Not the frantic pace of panic, just the careful measure of a city that practices. The cradle lowers exactly to my chest and stops. Inside a bronze cylinder sits open and empty. A mouth that expects the right word. I pour a drop from the tiny amphora into it, not oil, not water, but that thicker, not liquid I have met in sweating jars. It clings without wetting and the cylinder hums approval. The rope tightens once around my waist as if to say good. Now do not fall, and I do not. The cradle lifts and vanishes, and somewhere above wood shifts into place, and the arena I cannot see now is preparing its boards the way a stagehands breathes on. Cue. I move inland along the lane, the mirrors outline, and arrive where the boundary stones wait, pale, patient, their tops flashing silver when the bronze light finds them. Their hum is soft today, more like a greeting than a question. I lay my palm on one and it answers with that low, agreeable note. Then something small and improbable happens. A bird crosses the same stubborn noon square over the augur's platform with a clean wing beat, and I feel the old argument kick in. Historians still debate whether augurs were reading gods or whether their lichus cut the sky into prophecy or schedule. But the feather cuts the air regardless, and the city files the moment into its ledgers without asking our panel to vote. The rope leads me on to the laurel-marked roof, the basalt table brightening into its thin capillaries. Lines of liquid drawing a path I already half know, forum, granary, amphitheater I square, and then an alley I have somehow refused to walk. The table writes exit, then erases it out of politeness. I angle down through a service door where the walls are frank about their purpose. Pegs labeled line, pulley, wedge, spare, no ghosts, only craft, and it calms me more than any miracle mainstream fact. Roman opus cementitium made roofs and vaults that shrugged at centuries. Tidy ironwork and rope logic let small crews move big ideas. Fringe note, some households taught their kids knots before letters because knots stopped what letters merely recorded. I step into a small reading room that smells like warmed ink, open scrolls and wax, a lamplight without flame humming its steady gold. The desk presents a wax tablet already beginning to write under my unlowered stylus, night 6 counted. It carves, return the borrowed eye. It adds, deepening the line as if the house is tired of asking nicely. I set the eye on the desk and for a breath nothing happens. Then the window that normally refuses the sky shows me the arena from the cheap seats. Boards closed, sand smoothed, a circle tightening at the center like a pupil. I pick up the eye again because I am not ready to leave it where any room can scold me. And the rope forgives me by loosening the knot at my wrist and slipping away toward a narrow arch. We empty into a square I do not recall ever naming, its floor set with 7 concentric rings, broken by pedestals, each pedestal topped with one of the household marks. When I touch them in the order the city has been teaching me, laurel, bread, key, Amphorae, rope, mirror, eye, the central rings sink to reveal a stair, salt on the breath below. And I follow to a chamber where the water keeps a perfect face until I lean, then shows me the hatch, the wheel, and a shadow almost like mine but not, a companion I have met only in reflections. Nodding once in a moth wing motion I recognize. Light joke too to tame the twinge, if my shadow has opinions it can pay half the rent. The rope leads me back up, past a corridor where tiny calendars in bronze line the wall. Some complete weeks, some broken, one with its last day left blank as if saving a seat. Scholars still argue whether those gaps meant disaster or discretion, whether a town edited its own time for reasons too practical or too pious to admit. And it comforts me that their quarrel remains unfinished like the tablet's dash. I reach the amphitheater gate just as the light under the board swells by a shy degree. A breath behind the stage and the sand, or would-be sand, settles a new path that remembers me. I stand at the lip and make the small promise that is all I can afford. I will return what I borrowed when the house has finished teaching me what to do with empty hands. I tuck the bronze eye against my heart so its hum sits with my pulse, and I let the rope guide me to the place on the rail where a sailor's knot has always waited. Just untied enough to invite, the wheel turns its careful 3 and rests. The city says your line, and I answer without knowing the words yet, stepping onto the boards that are not sand and feeling the whole machine, mosaics, mirrors, funnels, clocks, calendars, traps, and kindness, lean in to listen. The boards under my feet are warm, carrying the slow pulse of whatever runs beneath. The ropes slack at my ankle but not leaving. As if unsure whether I am cargo or crew, the bronze sky overhead is cut into a perfect ring by the amphitheater's walls. Every archway dark, watching. The sand has been replaced entirely by these planks, each one polished to a sheen that reflects just enough light to seem shallow. Mainstream fact steadies my breath. Roman amphitheaters often had wooden floors over hypogeum chambers where machinery, cages, and scenery could be raised during shows. Fringe speculation whispers that some provincial arenas used these spaces for private rites long after the games had stopped, their boards creaking under processions rather than gladiators. I take a step toward the center, and the sound that answers is not a creak but a quiet tap. Like a knuckle on a hollow door, the rope slides ahead and circles a point where the planks are faintly marked with the laurel, bread, and ice symbols carved small and shallow. I kneel, tracing them with my fingertips, and the board beneath shifts a hair, enough to admit that it is not fixed. The rope coils in a small spiral and holds. I press the bronze eye to the marks, and the board lifts just enough to let a draft escape, cool and smelling faintly of fennel and beeswax. I ease it open further and see a narrow stair descending into darkness lit by a single line of bronze light from somewhere below. I follow, the rope brushing my shoulder like a careful guide. The stair ends in a long corridor whose walls are set with shelves of Amphorae, each sealed with wax stamped in the shape of an eye. The golden grain in my pocket warms sharply, and the rope tugs me toward the far end where a basin sits. Shallow and made of black basalt, its surface covered with fine dust. I blow gently and the dust swirls away to reveal a map I have seen before, the city reduced to 7 points. But now the I-square is joined by a faint 8th point beyond the known ring. Historians still debate whether such peripheral spaces in Roman plans were reserved for expansion, defense, or symbolic symmetry. Fringe detail insists they marked sites that existed only in ceremony. The rope taps the basin twice and the image fades, replaced by a reflection of my own hand holding both the eye and the amphora. I pour a single drop into the basin and the reflection ripples, showing a narrow dock where the uphill water runs faster than it should. Then the hatch above closing, then darkness. I set the amphora down and follow the rope to a side passage that rises steeply, its walls scratched with sailors' knots and the laurel I pair. The passage ends at a small door that opens directly onto a boundary stone lane, the tops of the stones flashing silver in sequence like a slow, deliberate signal. And as I step between them, the rope tightens once and the wheel above the arena gives 3 slow turns, the sound rolling through the city like a promise I am not ready to name. The silver glint on the boundary stones fades as I pass, replaced by the bronze glow that threads the city's veins. The rope loose but persistent at my ankle, pulling me toward a street I have avoided without meaning to, its paving stones narrower, set in a herringbone pattern that guides the eye toward a single archway ahead. Mainstream fact keeps my pace. Even the herringbone, or opus spiccatum, was common in Roman paving for its durability, particularly in places expecting heavy foot traffic. But fringe curiosity wonders if the pattern here is less about strength and more about funneling the walker toward what waits. The arch's keystone is marked with the wave and the laurel side by side, the combination still rare in this city. I step through into a small plaza where the ground dips to form a shallow basin, its floor covered in fine sand with the numeral 7 drawn at the center. The windless air makes the precision unsettling. The golden grain in my pocket warms. The rope coils beside the 7 and the sand beneath it trembles, then collapses into a shallow depression revealing a polished bronze plate. I crouch and see it is engraved with a ring of bees chasing each other clockwise. In the middle a palm cradles an open. I press the bronze eye from my hand into the plate and the bees begin to turn. Not engraved now but moving, tiny mechanical bodies spinning in perfect rhythm. The plate warms and the sound of the rope will reaches my ears. Faster than usual, I lift the eye and the bees stop, frozen in place. The rope moves toward a narrow stair descending under one side of the plaza. I follow into a dim chamber lined with racks of Amphorae, smaller than those in the hypogeum, each sealed with the laurel and wave. Historians still debate whether such storage spaces beneath open plazas were civic reserves, private caches, or ritual offerings disguised as practical stock. Fringe detail claims some were timed to be opened only after certain omens or mechanical signals from elsewhere in the city. The rope taps the seal of one amphora and it glows faintly before dimming again. We move on to a low arch where water flows uphill in a narrow channel. Its surface glassy and still. I crouch to touch it, and the reflection shows not my face but the hatch in the arena floor, half open, boards breathing. I withdraw my hand and the reflection vanishes, replaced by the bronze ceiling of the laurel-marked roof. I stand and follow the rope along the channel until it opens onto a dock. I saw in the basin's vision earlier, the uphill water slipping beneath a carved keystone marked with a B and the numeral 7. The rope pauses here, waiting, and from somewhere above the wheel, turns 3 deliberate times. The pause afterward deep enough to feel in my bones. As if the city has just set a clock I do not yet know how to read. The pause after the wheel's 3 turns feels like a lid resting on a simmer. Not clamped, just placed with the kind of trust a careful cook has in timing. The rope drifts to the dock's carved keystone, B and 7 together like a tidy signature. And I set my palm there, half expecting a sting, getting instead a little warmth that climbs into my wrist and steadies. The uphill water below the arch keeps its unbothered glide, and for a second the surface shows me the amphitheater boards. Again, then edits me out and shows only the hatch breathing as if the city is practicing calm. I follow the rope alongside the channel into a low passage where the walls narrow until my shoulders brush damp stone. The air here is pitch, salt, fennel, and a sweet note like figs left too close to the brazier. A tiny bronze plaque at knee height shows the 7 household marks in a ring and a palm in the center. When I press the bronze eye there a seam gives and the wall swallows itself a hand's width, admitting a workroom arranged like someone's very patient brain. Racks labeled line, wedge, spare, beeswax, tally. Yes, tally, in a room no one living should need. The wax tablets stacked with their edges still glossy as if the stylus only just left the last line. Mainstream anchor to keep my breath even. Ostia's and Rome's Horea took their pride in method, sealed rooms, numbered bays, lead tags, inventory tablet on the door, a bureaucracy of grain that could out-remember anyone's steward. Here the logic hums the same tune. Only the audience has gone to bed for 2,000 years. The rope taps a small door in the back of the room and I open it to a stair that can't decide if it wants to be a ladder. Slick and shallow and spiraling until my thighs remember that I promised my knees a gentler century. Light joke one to slow the heart. The stair ends in a round cellar where 7 shallow basins stand in a ring, each stamped at the lip with one of the marks. All filled to the rim with liquid that looks like oil but sits like water and refuses to wet my fingertip. Fringe cork to file. I dip the reed from the laurel roof and try to write a line across. 1 basin and the stroke glows then lifts cleanly like thread, floating until it tucks itself into a notch on the rim. Somewhere a thoughtful engineer is glaring at me from history's balcony and I blow him a kiss because the trick works. The rope nudges me toward the basin stamped with the eye and I lower the mirror until the surface decides to be generous, giving me the Laurel House channel's writing exit. Then blanking and showing the boundary stones blinking in a slow, polite left to right, hello, you are being expected. Then showing nothing at all, I pocket the mirror and the rope slides to a paneled hatch that looks like every other panel until you admit you have learned the pattern. Palm carved there, small as a coin. I place the warm seed and the panel retreats to reveal a crawl space where the air drops in temperature hard enough to pinch my teeth. And when I clamber through I find a corridor whose floor is a mosaic of tiny wave marks that move if you do not look directly at them. A sea you can't drown in, the corridor opens onto a chamber. That could be a chapel if chapels were engineered. 7 thin columns holding a ceiling painted with black rectangles that steal light. The floor a black basalt disc cut with the arena's familiar rings. Only here the rings meet in a single slit that exhales air in a clean, cool ribbon. Historians still debate whether slit vents in substructures were practical, draft control, smoke relief, or carried ritual purpose. Channeling breath or voice during processions. The archaeology leans practical. The inscriptions wink ceremonial. and the truth keeps sipping from both cups as usual. I kneel, and the warm seed answers with heat that climbs into my palm. The bronze eye hums until I feel it in my jaw. The rope wraps my ankle loosely like a seatbelt that does not want to admit it is working. I lower the seed toward the slit, and a low chord swells from somewhere in the stone. Not loud, just the kind of sound that puts its hand on your spine and says attention, then fades. A side door unlatches, and I pass into a loggia opening above a sunken court where the floor presents a clean copy of the 7-ring mosaic, each break capped with a pale pedestal supporting a familiar object: loaf, key, coil, amphora, mirror, laurel, eye. Except the mirror shows the court I stand in from a slightly wrong angle. As if the city enjoys standing a half step behind me, I touch them in the city's preferred order, and the central rings drop, giving me a stare that smells of new timber and tar. I descend into a hall that is part dock, part throat, water slicking in along a gutter that insists on climbing, and across the gutter a frame hangs with its rope loop poised. The wheel above exhale clicks once, counting, exhale clicks again. Counting, and the loop drops to a polite reach. I do not step in because even I learn eventually, and the rope seems to approve by taking the lead through a side arch into a storage gallery where every third niche holds a tiny bronze plate engraved with fast-eye letters: good days, bad days, market days, and the last 7 line deep as if the hand pressed to insist. I run a finger along the cuts and feel the old debate lift its head. The calendars that kept the Republic and Empire on task rarely matched live time. Intercalations, local feasts, festivals smudged by ships late from Alexandria. And whether provincial towns edited weeks for reasons of devotion or delivery still makes historians argue pleasantly at conferences. The plate hums under my skin like it has its own opinion and then quiets. The rope waits at a door punched with bees. 7, Laurel, the city's handshake, and on the other side the street opens suddenly as if it had been held behind teeth. Boundary stones ahead blinking their patient silver once. Twice, like a metronome that refuses drama. I take the short stairs to the augur's platform and lean on the little carved liturus set in the stone. Silly habit now. I know, but the staff hums a hare, and a single bird crosses the same forbidden noon square. Obedient to no schedule but its own. Light joke too to keep the shoulders low. If we argue long enough we will convince ourselves birds read Latin, and the city declines to scold me. The rope draws me along a laurel corridor whose leaves really are sharp and catch on my sleeve like a grandmother who still thinks you are too thin, into a reading room where the lamp casts the good honey light, and the tablet on the desk writes before I touch it. Night 6 counted, it says 7 approaches, then adds return the borrowed eye, carving deeper like the house is done being shy. I set the eye down, and the window that won't show sky shows me the amphitheater boards again, and for once something other than rope moves in the rafters. A shadow with my posture but not my patience nods in that moth wing way I keep meeting in the corners of reflections. I nod back to be civilized, then take the eye again because I am not leaving it where a sentence can shame me. The rope hums forgiveness and threads me through a suite of rooms that have been teaching the same lesson for 6 nights: beeswax, tally, rope, mirror, bread, laurel, and now simply wait with their tools laid out. Not daring a cue, I reach a courtyard whose floor is the 7-ring diagram I have learned like a song. I touch the pedestals in order, and the center drops into a pool that keeps its face still until I lean, and it shows me the laurel roof writing exit, and then, unwilling to be gracious, erases the word, and I hear myself whisper not yet, as if the city has ever promised me a later. The rope takes the hint and leads me to a modest pantry whose mosaic omits half the streets and includes a lane I have refused 3 times. It glows until I say fine and step through the side door it names, and the lane answers with tar breath from the drowned port and the soft tick of fresh boards somewhere overhead. We stop beneath a shutter staged with polished mirrors that pass their tiny sun down and down until a coin of day balances on my palm. then slides off and shows me the bees and 7 on the nearest keystone. I place the eye there. The plate warms, cools, and the hatch in the amphitheater. Miles of stone away, yet somehow here. Exhale clicks 3 times in my sternum. The rope does not pull now. It waits like a friend outside the performance door, and I go because nights in this city only count forward, never back, and I have run out of ways to avoid the word return. The amphitheater admits me by a vomitorium that pretends it has always been open. The boards underfoot a mild heat, the circle at center bright as breath, and when I kneel, the bronze eye heavy in both hands, the machine of the place, ropes, pulleys, clepsydra beats, mirror light, calendars cut into stone, leans in to listen while I say I borrowed, and the city answers with the smallest relief you can hear, a knot loosening somewhere above my head, which is how theaters tell you the next scene is finally ready. The knot above me loosens with a sigh. I feel more in my bones than in my ears, and the rope at my ankle slides away with the unhurried grace of a friend who knows you will follow anyway. The bronze sky overhead is a perfect coin again, framed by the amphitheater's curve, and the boards beneath me feel lighter, as if something essential has been lifted from their burden. The bronze eye rests cool in my palm now. Its hum barely there, like a heartbeat in sleep. Mainstream fact keeps me steady. Amphitheaters like this one were designed with careful drainage systems under the arena floor. Not just for cleaning blood and sand, but for cooling air and controlling smells, though fringe theories suggest some of those drains doubled as hidden communication lines, carrying sound or signal between distant points in a structure. The rope has already slipped toward the north exit, a shaded corridor where mirrors mounted high in the walls catch a wandering shard of sunlight and push it forward like a slow coin rolling down a tilted table. I follow through the vomitorium and out into a narrow lane between high brick walls, the kind of service alley that never makes it onto public maps. Its paving stones slope slightly toward a covered gutter where water runs uphill in stubborn defiance. I touch it and see, just for a moment, the laurel-marked roof from above, its capstones glowing faintly. Then the vision shifts to a calendar plate carved deep in stone. The last 7 days pressed so hard they almost cut through. I step back and the water goes glassy again. The rope leads me to a small courtyard shaded by vines heavy with unripe grapes. In the center is a circular fountain no higher than my knee, its basin dry except for a scatter of fine sand. The numeral V is drawn there, precise as a surveyor's line. I crouch, brushing the sand aside, and a bronze plate beneath reveals a ring of bees, chasing an open eye, the same motif that has greeted me in so many forms. I place the bronze eye there and the bees begin to turn, each in perfect time with the next. The plate warms in a pulse that runs into the paving stones under my feet. Somewhere far off the wheel turns twice, then holds. The rope slides toward a doorway framed in laurel carvings, and I follow into a long, low hall whose walls are lined with shelves of Amphorae, sealed with wax stamped in pairs of symbols, wave and laurel, bread and eye, coil and mirror. Historians still debate whether such pairings and seal designs were purely decorative or marked contents, origin, or intended recipient. Fringe rumor claims certain pairs were linked to private routes through the city, a kind of architectural key. The rope taps a jar sealed with bread and eye, and I lift it down, feeling the weight shift strangely, as though its contents cling to one side. I set it on a stone table in the corner and break the seal, but when I tilt it, nothing pours out. Instead, the interior glows with a map of the 7-ring mosaic, the eye square pulsing faintly, and beyond it that 8th mark I have seen only once. The glow fades as soon as I set the jar upright again. The rope does not insist on carrying it, only coils at my feet and waits. So I leave the amphora on the table and step through a narrow arch into a bright colonnade where the floor tiles are patterned in the herringbone that always seems to lead me to thresholds I am not ready for. At the far end, a small boundary stone blinks its silver twice in polite greeting, And from somewhere in the amphitheater, the wheel turns its 3 slow counts, the city setting another unseen clock in motion, leaving me to wonder how many of them I have already wound without knowing. The boundary stone's silver blink fades, leaving only the warm bronze wash of the city's light sliding along the colonnade floor. The rope glides toward it without hurry, as though this clock it just set has hours to spare. The herringbone tiles under my feet pull my gaze forward until the colonnade empties into a small plaza, ringed by low steps. In the center, a pedestal holds a shallow bronze bowl, its surface covered in a layer of fine dust. Mainstream fact steadies me. Bronze basins like this were often used in Roman, domestic and civic spaces for offerings, libations, or even as decorative water features. Fringe detail whispers that in some places, basins served as timekeepers when filled with water, their slow drip from a concealed source marking. Hours without bells. I blow gently and the dust stirs, revealing the engraved laurel and eye. I press the bronze eye from my palm into the laurel curve and the metal hums in a low, steady chord. Somewhere far above the wheel turns once, waits, then turns again. The rope coils twice around the pedestal before slipping off toward a shaded archway. The passage beyond smells faintly of fennel and beeswax, and the walls are lined with narrow recesses, each holding a small sealed amphora marked with one of the 7 symbols. I pass bread, rope, amphora, mirror, wave, and laurel before stopping at the eye. The seal here is carved deeper than the rest. Almost cut through. Historians still debate whether deeper seals were the mark of higher value contents, a warning of fragility, or a ritual emphasis. Fringe theory says some were meant to be broken only at certain times of year. I take the amphora down and it feels oddly weightless. The rope taps my wrist and leads me to a side chamber lit by a single slit window. In the center is a black basalt table etched with the 7-ring mosaic. But here the rings are connected by fine channels cut deep enough to carry liquid. I set the amphora in the center and break the seal. Nothing spills, but the table begins to glow along its channels, tracing the path from laurel to bread to key to amphora to rope to mirror to eye. Then outward toward that faint 8th mark. The glow fades, the table cools, and the rope tugs me toward another doorway where a flight of steps descends into a vaulted corridor. The air cooler, damp with the scent of stone that has been rinsed for centuries. The walls here are hung with bronze plates engraved with calendars, each showing 7-day spans. Some complete, others missing the final day. The rope stops at one with its last space left blank, and I feel the same quiet as in the reading rooms, an unfinished sentence waiting for me to write. The last word. Fringe detail insists such blanks were left as an offering to the unknown, a gesture to whatever might fill the day beyond the reach of the calendar's order. I touch the plate and the air shifts, a small hatch at the end of the corridor opening to reveal a dock where water runs uphill under a carved keystone of B and 7. The rope slips forward, and from somewhere above the wheel turns its 3 counts, the sound carrying through stone and water alike. Another measure marked in this city's quiet, relentless ledger. The uphill dock breathes its slow, inland tide, and the carved B over the 7 keeps its patient pose while the rope leads me along the waterline like a guide who knows I will stare at the reflections anyway. The channel's surface offers a practice reel of places I have already earned. The laurel-marked roof writing its hairline exit, the amphitheater boards pretending to be calm, the boundary stones blinking their tender silver. Then edits the footage until the water is only water again. I step onto a narrow ledge and the sound of the wheel arrives as a soft syllable I can almost pronounce. 3 turns, a hush, 3 turns. The little grammar the city trusts more than voices. A service door opens with the good manners of a hinge that has been oiled for centuries, and I pass into a corridor arranged with the honesty I keep loving. Pegs labeled line, wedge, spare, beeswax, tally, no ghosts, just craft. A decent backstage for miracles that refuse to trip. mainstream anchor drifts in to steady the hands. Roman collegia, guilds of bakers, shipwrights, rope makers, organized labor and devotion both, posting tablets and dues, keeping shrines to the lares of their trade on the same shelves where they kept ledgers, a civic rhythm that survived storms. And if a city was a machine, it was these little rooms that furnished the teeth. The rope noses me to a shallow stair that remembers 1,000 careful feet and ends at a bronze-lipped basin. It's liquid still as a held breath until I lower the palm mirror and it decides to be generous, showing the granary door with chalk tallies scraped clean, the laurel garden where the hedges refuse to grow, and a small square I have not managed to reach. Marked by the eye and nothing else, the picture fades before I can bargain for longer. Light joke one to keep the shoulders down, fine. I will take the director's cut when the city puts it on. Cassette. The rope approves with a little tap and slides through a mesh grate into an alley that pretends to be nothing. The paving herringbones my gaze toward a lintel stamped with laurel and bee. And beyond it a room that smells of warm ink and fennel and the faint iron tang of a tool scraped clean. On the table, a wax tablet is waiting with the stylus laid like cutlery. The first line already rising under my hand, though I have not touched it. Night 6 counted. Night 7 approaches, and then it carves the thing it has been carving in every dialect of architecture all week. Return the borrowed eye, and digs that last line deeper. As if to make a groove for my reluctance to settle into, I set the bronze eye on the wood and nothing moves. Not the lamp's good honey, not the mirrors fixed under the eaves to ferry a sliver of daylight in, not even the little dust that likes to dance near decisions, but the rope loops my wrist. Not tight, just neighborly, and we leave before the room can become a scold. The lane beyond climbs a step and opens into a cloister where 7 thread-thin fountains tick into a common bowl at different rates, 1 bead for rope, 1 for bread, 1 for wave, a tiny orchestra that does not need a conductor. I hold the eye above them and they fall together for the space of a slow breath before wandering back to their private tempos. Historians still debate whether domestic clepsydry timed chores or only lent the idea of time to houses that preferred ritual hours over solar ones. The archaeology writes in 2 inks. A public basin that disciplined speeches by drip and a private one that soothed a household by the same sound. I file that away with the other quarrels I like, augurs reading birds or whether the pomerium is law or metaphor, whether provincial amphitheaters ever staged real Namakii or just a good rumor with damp boards, and step into a peristyle whose floor shows the city reduced to 7 points again, except an 8th glows faint beyond the ring, as if a door has been waiting outside the map the whole time. Fringe appetite perks its ears. Some antiquarians swore of excess places, precincts that existed only when the household kept its calendar straight. I follow the rope through a bee-marked postern, and it simply delivers me to an ordinary workyard where loaves cool to stone without ever being warm, stamped eyes at their centers like patient pupils. A pile of coils sits with a sailor's dignity, and a row of Amphorae glisten with that not water sheen that refuses my skin. Light joke too, because nerves like candy. If the city offers moisturizer again, I am finally saying yes. We cut behind the ovens and meet a stair with numbers scratched into the plaster and lots of 7, every set stopping at 6, the city's idea of suspense. And at the bottom a low vault lets me watch the upriver trick perform itself, water going wrong and right at once. Polite physics next to ritual grammar. I place my palm on the bronze lip and the liquid shows me the auger's platform. A bird crossing the stubborn square with an absolutely disrespectful wing beat. And I catch myself grinning because some things ignore choreography. The rope brings me to a threshold with bees and 7 and an eye, the city's handshake, and inside a chamber where 7 shallow pedestals hold the household's props, staged for a rehearsal. Half-loaf, key, coil, amphora, mirror, laurel. The mirror shows me from half a beat behind like it has all week. A second self that nods, moth wings small. I nod back like a civilized person and we both fade. I touch each object in the order I have learned by walking. and a floor panel retreats into a stair smelling of tar and new timber. Down there the dock is dressed like a throat again, and the frame's loop hangs at perfect height for a mistake. I do not step into it, and the rope thanks me by guiding me instead into the gallery of bronze plates where tiny calendars stream along the wall. 7-day spans cut like little gutters for habit. To run in, many complete, some broken, one with a blank last square, and I stand at that gap and feel the silent city's use when they hand the pen to the living. Quirky aside, I have not confessed yet. In one corner a plate is engraved with a fish and a fig knotted together, as if someone decided the shopping list belonged on the schedule, fringe detail that once got an entire article. A scholar argued provincial plates doubled as domestic reminders, and half the field wrote rebuttals with cheerful knives. I breathe until the rope lifts the knot of my wrist and we climb to the boundary lane where the stones blink in sequence like a slow code. I put my palm to one and the note under my skin is warmer than yesterday. Less warning, more welcome. It makes me say out loud to no one that I will bring the eye back. I will, and the stone answers by not disagreeing. We turn toward the laurel roof and the basalt table. Starts its capillary trick, lines of invisible liquid drawing forum, granary, amphitheater, the eye-marked square, and then that pale eighth beyond the old diagram until the channels erase themselves with tact. I take the side passage where a rope maker's guild might have kept its tally. Hooks shaped like question marks, pegs labeled with someone's hand, line, spare, beeswax. This is the kind of room that saves cities when shrines can't. The rope slides me into a half-lit study where the window refuses the garden in favor of the amphitheater's boards. And tonight the hatch is a little more ajar, a throat clearing behind a hand. And the lamp's honey leans toward the word the tablet likes best, return, and I step back because the throat I hear might be mine. Light joke 3. If a building asks for a refund, I will need a receipt. The city pretends to ignore me and nudges me into a court where the 7-ring floor waits for its little dance. Pedestal to pedestal, laurel-bred key amphora rope mirror eye. The center sinking to a pool that keeps its face too still until I lean and it shows me the drowned port smoothing the carved week where I laid the sealed seed. A polite assurance stamped into stone. I take the hint and make for the amphitheater with the rope close now like a belt. The vomitorium opens with the same unfussy courtesy. The boards warm as a good table, and I kneel at the center where a palm is carved shallow into the plank, the bronze eye heavy in my hands. The wheel above me counting in its unshowy grammar. 3 turns, hush, 3 turns, and all at once I understand the only thing the city has asked since it walked me in. Feed what you can spare, not what you cannot live without. Mainstream fact lends spine to the moment. The Annona never promised luxury, only a ration, measured and stamped. Bread for the day, not for forever. Historians still debate whether that bureaucracy strangled generosity or saved urban life. But the stamp in the crust carried both law and kindness. I set the bronze eye in the wood and feel the knot above loosen again. A small cough through the rafters. A weight skidding from one hook to another, and a draft flows up from the hypogeum that smells like fennel and that oil that is not oil and the clean salt of water doing a trick under the floor. The rope withdraws its loop from my wrist the way a friend lets go when the door finally opens. And somewhere below the boards a pulley whispers yes. And I do not hear applause because that is not how this city loves you. I hear the quiet you only get in rooms that were built to remember, which is better. The boards beneath me keep their warmth as if holding onto the shape of the bronze eye even after it is gone. The rope slides away entirely now, leaving my ankles free but my direction already chosen. A vomitorium on the east side yawns open, its arch framed by faint laurel carvings. The air flowing through it carries a mix of fennel, beeswax, and something cooler, like stone rinsed by a slow tide. I follow into a narrow lane paved with herringbone brick, the pattern pulling my gaze toward a sunken courtyard ahead. Mainstream fact steadies my step. Opus spiccatum was often used in service corridors or spaces that needed durable footing. Fringe detail whispers that in certain households the herringbone led deliberately to places of decision, altars, strong rooms, or archives, where a patterned approach was meant to focus the mind. The courtyard here holds a round fountain no higher than my knees, dry except for a scattering of fine sand. The numeral 3 is drawn with perfect precision at its center. I crouch and brush the sand aside to find a small bronze plate engraved with the 7 household symbols, the palm mirror, and a ring of bees chasing each other in a clockwise race. I press my own bronze eye into the center and the plate hums, a warm ripple running into the paving stones. Somewhere above the wheel turns twice in slow measure. The rope is gone, but the city still guides me. A side door opens in the colonnade, its lintel stamped with B and 7, and I pass into a low hall lined with shelves of Amphorae, each sealed with wax marked in pears, bread and laurel, rope and wave, eye and mirror. Historians still debate whether such seals denoted contents, intended use, or were simply a decorative shorthand for the household's allegiance. Fringe theory suggests these paired symbols could be read as coordinates within the city, a hidden map for those who knew the code. I stop at an amphora sealed with eye and mirror, its wax cut deeper than the rest. When I lift it, the weight shifts oddly as though the contents are thick but restless. I carry it to a black basalt table in the center of the hall, its surface carved with the 7-ring mosaic connected by fine channels. I break the seal and tilt the amphora. Nothing pours out, but the channels begin to glow, tracing the path from laurel to bread to key to amphora to rope to mirror to eye. Then beyond to that faint 8th mark I have glimpsed before. The glow fades and the table cools. I leave the amphora and pass into a stair that spirals down to a corridor where the walls are lined with bronze calendar plates, some complete, others missing their final day. One plate catches my attention, its last square carved but left blank. Fringe quirk reminds me that certain Roman calendars left deliberate gaps as gestures toward the unknown, spaces meant for the will of gods or the unpredictable arrival of news from far-off provinces. I touch the blank square and a hidden hatch opens at the corridor's end, revealing a dock where water flows uphill beneath a carved B, 7, and laurel. I step onto the dock and the water's surface shifts to show me the amphitheater hatch breathing open and closed. Then the image fades, the wheel above turns 3 measured counts, and I understand the city is setting another clock. One I am not meant to read yet, but will feel in the timing of every step that follows. The uphill water slides beneath the B and 7 keystone, with the kind of composure that makes you doubt it is moving at all. Yet my palm on the carved laurel feels a faint vibration like a clock hidden deep in the stone. The dock's narrow planks are worn smooth in long arcs, a record of cargo or ritual steps. Mainstream fact steadies me. Roman docks often featured deliberate patterns where ropes and feet traced predictable paths, a sign of steady trade or repeated ceremony. Fringe curiosity adds that certain inland docks with no active shipping may have been maintained solely for symbolic arrivals. I follow a narrow channel inland, its surface offering flashes of places I have already seen. The laurel roof at dusk, the boundary stones blinking in sequence, the herringbone lane narrowing toward the sand-marked courtyard, before returning to plain water. The path rises toward a doorway framed in carved coils and the wave symbol. I step through into a vaulted storehouse with hooks, pegs, and benches labeled in Latin shorthand, the kind a rope maker's collegium might have used. Pegs marked line, wedge, beeswax, tally, all lined with the same practical order that feels older than this city's strangeness. The far wall is broken by a narrow bronze door engraved with the 7 symbols in a ring and the palm in the center. I press the warm seed from my pocket to the carving and the door clicks open, revealing a spiral stair that descends into a round chamber. 7 shallow basins arranged in a perfect ring around a central plinth. Each basin stamped with one of the household marks and filled with a clear liquid that refuses to wet my skin. Fringe detail recalls tales of memory oil used in certain rites, where a written word or symbol could be laid upon the surface and then retrieved days later intact. I lower the palm mirror to the basin stamped with the eye, and the reflection shows me a street I have never walked, lined with pale arches, each arch topped with bee and laurel. The image shifts to the amphitheater boards, the hatch at their center closed, then to a single calendar plate with all 7 days carved deep and a faint eighth square glowing just beyond. The vision fades. I lift the mirror and step back. The plinth in the center hums, and a seam opens to reveal a short passage. At its end, a flight of steps rises into daylight beneath a small pergola draped in grapevines, their leaves filtering the bronze light into green. The floor here is a mosaic of the 7-ring diagram, with each break capped by a pedestal. But these pedestals are empty. The absence feels deliberate, like a stage waiting for props. Historians still debate whether such empty settings were meant to signal an unfinished rite or to invite the participant to bring their own tokens. I leave the pergola and step into a lane that runs straight toward the laurel-marked roof, its tiles bright against the dim sky, and as I approach, somewhere beneath the stones the wheel turns its 3 slow counts, not calling me closer, just letting me know the city still hears my steps. The lane delivers me to the laurel-marked roof as if pulled by a thread stitched under the paving, the basalt table waiting with its capillaries already damp as though the city anticipated my hands. The rope is nowhere visible now, but the timing sneaks along the walls. 3 turns, a hush, like a metronome in the next room. I set the palm mirror down and it refuses my face, choosing instead a detail I have avoided, that faint eighth beyond the neat ring of 7, hovering like a footnote that wants to be the thesis. The capillaries brighten and trace the old grammar, forum, granary, amphitheater. I square, and then curve outward toward a margin my walking never reached. The bronze light above tightens its tone the way a string does when tuned just past perfect, and a side panel in the wall slides open without asking my opinion. A plain corridor beyond. Pegs labeled in the same tidy script, line, wedge, spare, beeswax, and a reed laid sideways as if someone set it down mid-thought, mainstream anchor to steady pulse. Roman houses that could afford it kept these efficient backstage bones. Storerooms with numbered pegs, labels in chalk, to belly for inventories. The habit of order was infrastructure wearing a quiet toga. Fringe whisper keeps pace. Some families swore their lararia, remembered the household's promises if fed at proper intervals, a private ledger kept by gods of the threshold. I pass a clepsydra small as a helmet, a winter/summer plate scratched with unequal hours, and smile because a basin that argues with the sun is my kind of coworker. Light joke one, HR will love that. Then follow a stair soft underfoot into a cloister where 7-thread thin fountains strike a common bowl in uncoordinated patience. I hold the bronze eye above them, and for one long inhale they fall together, then wander off again like musicians packing up after rehearsal. Historians still debate whether domestic water clocks were precision or performance. Did they truly regulate chores or soothe nerves with the idea of time? I leave them to their pleasant fight and take the bee-stamped postern the table named, out into a lane that narrows until even my thoughts tuck their elbows in. The paving switches to opus spiccatum, and the pattern carries my gaze to an arch whose keystone pairs wave and laurel, uncommon here, and the breath of the drowned port lifts in cool ribbons along the stone. Inside, a suite of rooms behaves like every other. Neat benches, hooks like question marks, coils with sailor patience, bread coolers that never warmed. Only the floor betrays the difference, a mosaic of the 7-ring diagram with a hairline path, etched beyond to that 8th dot. Daring me to notice, I kneel and the golden grain in my pocket heats once, then calms as if to say yes, I see it too. The mirror shows the dot as a tiny court, bounded by low walls with bee and laurel on their teeth. The image flickers to the amphitheater boards, the hatch lifted by a polite finger, then the boundary stones blinking in sequence, then dark again like a stage hand pulling a shutter. Light joke 2, yes, I will buy a proper ticket next time, so I go where the etching points and the city rewards the obedience by offering an almost ordinary door. Lintel stamped with laurel, bee, and the little palm I keep finding in important places. Beyond it, the air smells of beeswax and ink warmed by the same lamp for centuries. A reading room compact enough to count as a confession booth. The wax tablet writes under my stylus before I choose a letter. Night 6 counted. Night 7 approaches, and then digs the familiar line deeper. Return the borrowed eye. Each stroke heavier like a tutor who has exhausted cheerful methods. I set the eye on the desk, and the window that refuses gardens returns the amphitheater in miniature. Boards calm, then breathing, then calm again, the wheels grammar in wood. I take the eye back, not ready, not yet, and the room pretends not to be disappointed. The 8th dot's corridor exits to a gutter where water runs uphill under the smallest arch I have seen here, and the reflection shows me something I would laugh at if I had not learned manners. Myself, from half a beat ahead, the moth wing nod of that second shadow. Then a hand, mine, notching a tally to 7 and stopping as if the chalk broke. Mainstream fact to pin the nerves. Emperors in Rome once flooded the Colosseum for mock sea battles. Scholars still argue how often and how feasible that trick truly was given the later hypogeum. Some say Naumachii belonged to earlier arenas or purpose-built basins, not marble giants with deep underworks. I step along a quay where bollards are worn like old teeth and think of boards that could carry water or breath or birds on a dare. Fringe cork slips and grinning. Fullers used urine to clean togas. Consider this my reminder that even in miracles, housekeeping runs the empire. Light joke 3. The city declines to find me for tone. The rope is absent but timing escorts me. 3 turns above and a hush. The secret punctuation that has taught my ankles to wait between beats. The lane climbs to a tiny square with no pedestals. Only a palm-shaped depression cut into the floor as if a giant placed a hand there and asked the stone to remember. I set the bronze eye into the palm, and for a long breath nothing happens. Then the bronze sky bends a degree and the boundary stones blink left to right like an unhurried code. The depression warms, cools, and returns the eye to my fingers untouched. Alone, extended, without a new signature. The side wall folds back to show a workshop that makes a scholar laugh on instinct. Labels, indexes, neat drawers, the word tally cut proud into wood, and under a cover a tiny heliostat arrangement. Shines a coin of true daylight along mirrors until it lands on a brass plate engraved with a palm. The beam licks the line and slides away to trigger a door seam. Optics in a city that majors in hydraulics. A small engineer's panache that feels like a wink. I descend into a walkway whose floor is a black wave that shivers if you glance at it from the corner of your eye. And at the end a round chamber opens where 7 basins sit like quiet bells, each stamped bread. Rope, key, amphora, laurel, wave, eye, their liquids refusing to wet my skin. I lower the mirror to the eye and it shows me the 8th court from above. Just long enough to memorize the notch of wall, then gifts me a whisper of the auger platform where a bird breaks the unlawful square as if no one posted the rules. Scholars will quarrel forever whether augury was meteorology in liturgy's clothes or sacred grammar that bent weather to schedule. I love them for not locking the answer. I climb into a shaded pergola draped with grape leaves so green the bronze light softens. The floor repeats the 7-ring diagram and, finally, an 8th point glows faintly beyond. No pedestal, no prop, just space waiting for a step. The amphitheater will turns once, twice, thrice, slow as manners, and I understand the city is not hiding a door so much as withholding the courage to use one. I step, and the 8th point accepts me the way a well-made hinge accepts a secret with no complaint. The court is small, its walls low, their tops carved with bees and laurel and tiny eyes that are more patient than judgmental. The center offers nothing but a bronze plate identical to the others. except for a single line cut beside the palm. Feed only what you can spare. I am jerked back to the dock calendar that took the sealed seed and smoothed the week. To the bread stamps with their watchful pupils. To the tiny fountains that agree for just one shared breath. To the mosaics that redrew alleys until even I could read them, mainstream aside to brace the decision. The Anona's ration loaves carried stamps for baker and batch, a bureaucracy that turned hunger into numbers so cities could keep their feet. Whether that strangled generosity or saved the poor remains a live argument, but stamped bread bought time. And time is what ritual always pretends to be buying. I set the bronze eye on the plate, feel the least knot loosen somewhere under the boards of the world, and the plate warms, cools, and gives it back, not collected, only acknowledged. A ledger entry that says seen, not seized. The 8th point dims, satisfied not with sacrifice but with a promise kept loud enough for stone. The corridor back to the laurel roof straightens as if it had been daydreaming while I walked. The basalt table brightens and writes exit, then erases it. Prim tutor, and the mirrors under the eaves ferry a coin of daylight across my wrist that vanishes before I can pocket it. I cross the boundary lane where the stones hum their less worried note and the augur's platform keeps its law while a bird declines to notice. The amphitheater boards breathe once under a hand-eye. Won't see, and the city, having spent 6.5 nights training my feet to count, chooses, most kindly, not to make me hurry the 7th. The amphitheater holds its breath as I linger at the edge of the arena. The board's warm enough to remind me of the bronze eye's weight, though it now rests in my satchel. The wheel above offers a single turn, a pause, then another, as if marking a new kind of time. One that measures hesitations instead of hours. I take the north vomitorium out into a lane that leans downhill, the paving changing from herringbone to broad, flat stones polished by centuries of feet. Mainstream fact steadies me. Many Roman streets were built with a slight camber to shed water into side channels, keeping the center drier for walkers. Fringe detail says in certain districts those channels were designed to carry scented runoff from dye works or perfumers, a civic kindness or a sly advertisement. This lane smells faintly of rosemary and beeswax, the air shifting cooler as I pass beneath an arch carved with laurel and wave. Beyond is a small square paved with the 7-ring mosaic, each break capped with a low pedestal, but here each pedestal holds a vessel, amphorae, baskets, small chests, all sealed with wax and stamped in pairs of symbols. I circle them. Bread and rope, amphora and eye, coil and mirror, then stop at laurel and bee, the wax cut deeper than the rest. I press the bronze eye to it and the seal softens enough for me to lift the lid. Inside is a shallow dish of that not oil liquid, its surface mirror still. I lower the palm mirror and the reflection offers me the 8th chord again. But this time it is empty. No plate, no palm, just the faint outline where they should be. The image fades and I am left staring at my own hand. The rope is absent, but the city's timing is here. 3 turns from the wheel carrying easily through the stone. A door in the far wall opens on a stair descending to a vaulted corridor lined with shelves, each cubby labeled with numbers in 7s, some filled with coiled rope, others with jars, still others empty. Historians still debate whether such storage systems were purely practical or carried symbolic weight in their arrangement. Fringe theory insists that in certain households the empties marked promises, goods pledged but not yet delivered. The air here smells faintly of fennel and warm clay. The corridor ends in a dock where uphill water hums under a keystone of bee, 7, and laurel. The reflection shows me the amphitheater hatch closed, the laurel roof dark. Then the calendar plate with its blank final square. The wheel turns above, slow and deliberate, and I feel the city waiting, not impatient, but certain that whatever must be placed in that square is already in my hands, though I have yet to name it. The uphill dock seems quieter than before, the hum in the stone subdued, as though the city has wrapped it in cloth. I step back into the vaulted corridor and take the stair upward. the air warming with each turn until I emerge into a sunken courtyard ringed by columns, their capitals carved with the 7 household symbols in no apparent order. Mainstream fact steadies my thoughts. Column capitals in Roman architecture were often adorned with acanthus, laurel, or mythic scenes, decorative more than functional. Fringe detail suggests that in certain enclosed courtyards, carvings were used as mnemonic devices, silent inventories of the households, allegiances, trades, or ritual calendar. In the center of this courtyard lies a shallow pool drained to dampness, its floor inlaid with the 7-ring diagram. But here the rings are connected by faint lines toward a point beyond the edge, the same elusive eighth I have chased for days. I kneel and trace one of the lines with my fingertip, the stone warm under the bronze light, and a panel in the arcade slides open to reveal a narrow passage. Inside the walls are lined with shelves of Amphorae sealed with wax stamped in pairs. I and wave, bread and laurel, mirror and coil. I choose bread and laurel, its wax seal softening at my touch. Inside is a coil of thin rope the color of old gold, its texture dry but supple. I loop it loosely around my wrist and feel a subtle pull. Not as insistent as before, but guiding. It leads me through another arch into a dim room where a bronze basin sits upon a tripod, the basin's rim engraved with the 7 symbols. The eye opposite the laurel. I lower the palm mirror to the water inside, and the reflection shows the blank final square of the calendar plate. The golden grain I carry warming in my pocket. Fringe speculation suggests certain grains or seeds were ritually placed in such blanks as placeholders for intentions. Promises made to gods or ancestors. The reflection fades and the water stills. I leave the basin and follow the rope's gentle pull up a tight stair into a chamber under the laurel-marked roof. The basalt table there hums faintly, its capillaries lit just enough to trace. Forum, granary, amphitheater, I square, then the faint eighth. I set the golden grain in the center and the table accepts it without movement. Yet the warmth in the air shifts. A subtle easing, as if a balance has been adjusted. Somewhere far off the wheel turns 3 slow counts, and I understand that whatever the blank square needs, I have just given part of it, though the city will not yet tell me the rest. The basalt table cools under my fingertips, its capillaries fading back into the stone, as if the golden grain had never been there. Yet the air in the chamber feels lighter, like a room after a sealed window is cracked open. I step out beneath the laurel-marked roof into a lane that drifts downhill toward a quieter quarter of the city. Mainstream fact steadies my pace. Roman residential districts often clustered around internal courtyards and narrow alleys, designed to funnel breezes and keep interiors cooler. Fringe detail murmurs that some alleys doubled as acoustic channels, carrying the sounds of bells, chants, or even distant water wheels as subtle signals. The paving here changes to small, irregular stones, their uneven rhythm slowing my steps until I arrive at a modest square where a bronze plate is set into the ground. Engraved with the 7 household symbols in a ring, the eye directly opposite the laurel, I kneel and press the bronze eye into its place. The plate warms and a seam opens beside it, revealing a shallow box lined with beeswax tablets, each inscribed with lists, tallies, and single words in careful hand. I lift one that bears only the numeral 7 and the word expecto. Historians still debate whether such single-word tablets were personal reminders, ritual prompts, or coded messages. Fringe theory claims they were offerings meant to be erased and rewritten as vows were fulfilled. I return the tablet and the seam closes, leaving no trace. A side passage from the square leads into a long, narrow hall where light filters down through slits in the roof, catching dust motes in still air along one wall. 7 niches hold objects: a loaf, a key, a coil, an amphora, a mirror, a laurel branch, an empty palm-shaped depression. I touch the depression and feel a faint pull toward the amphitheater, as though the city has quietly threaded the idea into my bones. The passage ends at a door opening onto a dock where uphill water hums beneath a B&7 keystone. The reflection this time shows me the blank square of the calendar plate again. Brighter now, the outline of a grain at its center. Then the image dissolves into the pattern of the herringbone paving. The wheel above turns 3 slow counts. A sound that feels less like an order and more like a reminder that the 7th night is closing in. The uphill dock's hum lingers in my ears as I leave by a side stair that climbs into a service alley no wider than my outstretched arms. The walls rising high and close enough to trap the bronze light in thin vertical slices. Mainstream fact steadies me. Many Roman alleys were designed narrow for shade, but also to serve as hidden access routes for servants, messengers, or guild members moving between workshops. Fringe detail adds that certain alleys doubled as symbolic thresholds, places where offerings or tokens could be exchanged unseen. Halfway along, a recessed niche holds a small amphora sealed with wax-stamped laurel and I break the seal and find a rolled strip of thin bronze, etched with the 7 household symbols in a spiral. The rope is gone, yet the strip seems to guide my hand toward the alley's end, where a low arch opens into a circular courtyard paved with the 7-ring mosaic. But here the rings are not empty. Each holds a shallow bronze bowl, 6 filled with clear liquid that beads away from my skin, the 7th dry, marked with the I. I lower the palm mirror into one of the filled bowls, and the reflection offers me a fleeting view of the 8th court. This plate empty again. Then the vision shifts to the calendar plate, its blank square faintly glowing, the golden grain now fully visible there. The image fades and I lift the mirror. The bowls remain still. Historians still debate whether such courtyard arrangements were decorative or functional, cooling the air, reflecting light, or serving in ritual cycles. Fringe theory claims the liquids were memory agents, holding images until a specific gesture released them. I cross to a shaded portico where a bronze door stands ajar, its lintel carved with B&7. Inside, a long gallery lined with low shelves holds sealed jars marked in pairs of symbols. I find one stamped with wave and bread, break the seal, and tip it over the basalt table in the center. Nothing pours, but the table glows along its channels, tracing laurel to bread to rope to amphora to mirror to I. Then, hesitating at the 8th mark, the glow fades and the air cools. A far-off sound of the wheel turning twice, pausing, then once more, as if to say the city's patient. But not endlessly so. I take a narrow passage from the gallery that opens into the amphitheater's shadow. The boards above quiet now, the hatch sealed, the colonnade around it breathing that faint fennel scent. I look back and see the bronze strip in my hand catching a shard of light, the spiral of symbols leading inward toward the eye, and for the first time, I think the city might not just be showing me the path, it is waiting for me to choose whether I will take the final step. The bronze strip in my hand coils into a shallow spiral as if remembering the niche it slept in, every loop etched with the 7 house signs in a sequence that tightens toward the eye. And though the rope has long since excused itself, the city still moves me with the gentle insistence of a metronome you have forgotten to wind. 3 turns, a hush, 3 turns, breathing through stone and timber. I follow the amphitheater's shadow along a herringbone lane that narrows my thoughts into a single file, the air tasting of fennel, pitch, and a sweetness like figs brushed with smoke. The walls lean just enough to pretend counsel, and the ground rises a palm width to a modest square where the 7-ring floor waits like patient. Stationary, the pedestals are empty tonight, their top faces polished by the kind of touching that adds up across generations. Mainstream fact to anchor this soft march. Roman families did keep domestic shrines, Lararia set with painted Laras, genius, and the household's old guarantees, and those niches stand in Pompeii with their soot and prayers intact. But scholars still debate whether these domestic rites were tightly regulated or gleefully improvised with borrowed civic grammar. How much was handbook and how much was habit, fringe detail to pocket with a straight face, curse tablets, depictions, turn up in drains and wells across the empire. Rolled lead whispered into water with names and wishes pinned down. You do not build a civilization without both ledgers and muttered insurance. I circle the square once because walking writes the thought better than stylus does, then press the bronze strip flat across the pedestals so that laurel meets bread, key meets amphora, rope meets mirror, and the eye waits at the center like a comma. A shallow click answers from below. The rings dim under a veil of dust that was not there, and the square opens a palm's width along an invisible seam, the kind of courtesy this city offers when it thinks you have finished your homework. The seam runs straight to a door whose lintel wears the quiet triad. B7, Laurel. And when I set my palm there, the warmth that answers is not heat so much as agreement. The corridor beyond is one I have walked by other names. Pegs labeled line wedge spare tally. A clepsydra on a bracket whispering unequal winter hours with the stubborn grace of a clock that refuses modern compromise. And I can't help the grin, light joke one. If HR asks, I will tell them my coworker is a bowl that argues with the sun. The stare down is honest about its intentions, shallow, tight, and perfumed with old tar. It delivers me to the drowned portside throat where keys keep the shape of business long after business. Left, the calendar cut in the stone shows the week I fed. The blank square smoothed by a sealed seed floating like a bead of oil. The water hushes over the carving and goes flat the way good glass does when it chooses not to show you anything. The wheel above answers with 2 careful turns and a third like a signature. Not hurry, not permission, just count. I climb again into a reading room that smells of warmed ink and beeswax. Window showing not a garden but the amphitheater boards in miniature. Their hatch ajar by exactly the width of a breath. The wax tablet begins its old refrain beneath my unlowered stylus. Night 6 counted. Night 7 approaches. Return the borrowed eye, and cuts that last line deeper as if making a groove for a habit to slide into. I lay the bronze eye on the desk and the room does not seize it. Only lets the lamp lean its honey toward the decision. I lift the eye again because I have learned the lesson but not the tune. And the city forgives me by opening a side seam into a corridor whose floor is set with tiny wave marks that move if you look away. A conjurer's habit I should resent and instead admire. At the end a round room waits with 7 thin columns and a black basalt disc cut with the arena's rings drawn tight to a single slit that breathes cool air. Mainstream fact to steady the hands. Underground chambers in Roman theaters and amphitheaters did the practical work. Lifts, cages, vents, opus cementitium vaults managing pressure and smoke while the crowd pretended to watch only the obvious. Whether these systems also carried private rituals is a question the brick won't answer and the texts refuse to admit. I kneel and lower the bronze eye until its hum becomes a low felt thing in my jaw. The slit exhales a line of breath sweet as fennel. The disc warms a fraction, and a side door unthreads itself, leading me to a little chapel of tools, a coil knotted in a sailor's pride, a loaf that will never cool, a mirror that prefers me at a moth wing's lag, a laurel that refuses to dry, and a palm-shaped depression on a waist-high pillar. I place the bronze eye into the palm the way you lay a coin on a friend's open hand when you owe something older than money, and the pillar warms, cools, and gives it back without argument. Ledger updated, not confiscation. I carry it upward along a service stair whose plaster tallies stop at 6 in every landing. Slow suspense written as arithmetic, and step into a court I have not earned until now. The 8th point that has trailed me like a footnote. Low walls carved with bees and laurel. Their tops flicking silver when the bronze light behaves. No pedestal here, no prop, only a brass plate flush with the stone engraved with a single line beside a palm. Feed only what you can spare, the sentence we have had in a dozen dialects of rope and basin. I set the golden grain against the plate for a breath, and though I know I already gave part of it to the basalt table under the laurel roof, the warmth that returns is not admonition but balance. The city rechecking its math, the plate cools, another seam finds daylight, And I am in a loggia hung above a small lane where mirrors mounted under eaves ferry a sliver of noon through a chain of glints until it lands on a brass plaque at my height. A tiny heliostat trick a Roman artisan would have defended hands-on in a workshop argument. Mainstream aside, polished metal mirrors handed light deeper into rooms. The evidence is there in fragments and philosophers grousing about glare, fringe quirk. Some houses etched names into their mirror backs to teach the mirrors to remember a face. I palm the plaque and the light hops on, triggering a door that yields into a pantry whose floor mosaic reduces the city to children's grammar. 7 points and a shy eighth, the path etched between them like capillaries. And yes, the pantry has the dignity to pretend it does not notice me pocketing its lesson. The narrow stair beyond empties into a boundary lane where the stones sing their lower, kinder note, blinking silver left to right like a slow code. I touch one and say aloud, because talking makes the breath behave, I will return what I borrowed. And the stone answers by not moving, which is the gentlest consent this town traffics in. Historians still debate whether the sacred pomerium moved with imperial whims or stayed stubborn while rhetoric did the travel. The archaeology makes a nuisance of itself by being both strict and suggestive. I cross back into the amphitheater where the boards have warmed to whatever the city placed. Underneath, the hatchet center drawn open the width of a palm, rope quiet but present in the grain of the timber. I kneel and set the bronze eye into a shallow recess carved like a small smile in the plank. And the machine above speaks in its grammar, 3 turns, hush, 3 turns, wood answering with a relieved tick in the rafters, a weight walking itself from one hook to the next. The breath rising cool from below with fennel and that not oil that clings but will not wet. Light joke too. If the city offers me moisturizer again, I will take it and send a review to Pliny. The recess warms and returns the eye, ledger marked, not emptied. The boards settle their shoulders and the circle closes to an even ring. I stand into a quiet that tastes finished around the edges but refuses to say so out loud. And the path the city lays under my feet is soft as agreement. Laurel roof for a last nod at the basalt map. A fountain whose threads of water choose to share a downbeat for one polite inhalation before wandering. A storeroom where pegs still label line wedge spare because order is its own benediction. The rope does not touch my ankle, but I feel it in the rhythm that keeps sneaking into my steps. I stop in a side room no bigger than a cell where a wax tablet waits with clean space and finally set. The stylus down to leave the smallest mark I have made here. The thing only I can spare. A single 7 scored light enough to be erased tomorrow. Heavy enough for stone to feel it tonight. And under it a line in the same hand that has been coaching me all week returned, after which the tablet is suddenly ordinary and the lamp is exactly a lamp. And I let the door pull shut with a domestic click that belongs more to kitchens than catacombs. Mainstream fact to tuck in the pocket before I go. Mithria loved basements and borrowed light. Inscriptions and altars crouch under modern streets from Rome to Londinium, whispered cult or soldier's supper club, depending on the scholar and the day, but every one of those rooms is part tool room, part theater, a place built to hold a practice, and this city has only ever asked me to practice keeping time with it. Fringe garnish, fullers clean togas with urine and hung amulets against envy in their shops. A city's miracles are never all at one altitude. I pass the boundary stones once more and they hum the same low yes. The auger's platform holds its stubborn square while a small bird declines to notice. The bronze sky keeps the warm coin of its noon, and somewhere behind me the wheel rests its weight on a new hook, lighter by whatever my little entry paid. Polite as ever, counting forward, not back, with the patience of a city that expects me to sleep after this and, in the morning, remember. The morning here never looks like morning anywhere else. The bronze light does not brighten so much as it sharpens, the shadows crisp as if drawn with a stylus. The air carrying the same fennel and wax scent that has followed me through lanes and chambers for nights. I step out from under a modest arch marked with bee and laurel into a lane paved with small square stones, their edges worn into soft bowls by long-departed feet. Mainstream fact steadies me. Roman paving stones were often intentionally set with slightly domed surfaces to shed water toward side gutters, an engineering detail still visible in ancient roads today. Fringe detail suggests that in certain districts, subtle patterns in the wear might have been read like a calendar. Locals tracing time by the fading of specific stones. My path leads me to a rectangular courtyard enclosed by high walls. The floor a simple grid of pale tiles except for a single inlay in the center, a palm holding an open eye. I kneel and press the bronze eye from my satchel into the design, and the tile beneath clicks softly. A panel in the wall sliding open to reveal a narrow stair. I descend into a dim, cool chamber lined with shelves holding sealed amphorae, each stamped with pairs of the household symbols. I find one marked rope and wave its wax seal cut deep. When I break it open, nothing spills but the floor mosaic. 7 rings around a faint eighth, begins to glow along its channels, tracing the familiar sequence and halting again at that final point. Historians still debate whether such sealed containers were for storage, ritual, or coded communication between allied households. Fringe theory claims they were used as keys. Their contents irrelevant compared to the act of opening. The glow fades, and the chamber's far wall reveals a small bronze door, its surface engraved with a calendar plate missing its last square. I press my hand to it and the door yields, leading into a dock chamber where water flows uphill under a keystone of B and 7. The reflection shows me the calendar again, the blank square glowing brighter, the golden grain at its center clearly visible. Then the image fades into the pattern of the herringbone paving. The wheel above turns 3 slow counts, the sound sinking into the water and the stone together, and I feel the city watching to see if I understand what the final night will require. The uphill dock hums under my feet as I step back. Through the bronze door, its calendar engraving still cool to the touch. I follow a side stair that rises into a narrow lane lined with walls so high they trap the bronze light into thin ribbons across the paving. Mainstream fact steadies me. Many Roman service lanes were designed to connect workshops with markets while keeping the movement of goods hidden from the public. Fringe detail says that in certain ritual districts these lanes acted as controlled paths for processions. The confined space focusing attention on the next reveal. The paving changes to herringbone and guides me toward a modest portico, its lintel carved with bee laurel, and the small palm I have come to recognize as a gatekeeper's mark. Inside, the floor holds the 7-ring mosaic, but here each ring is filled with a shallow bronze dish. 6 holding the bead-away liquid, the 7th, marked with the eye. Completely dry, I lower the palm mirror into one of the filled dishes and see the 8th quart again, empty save for the faint outline of a plate. Then the view shifts to the calendar plate, its final square glowing brighter than before, the golden grain solid at its center. The image fades. I lift the mirror and leave by a rear arch into a gallery where low shelves hold sealed jars, stamped in paired symbols. I take one marked laurel and rope, break the seal, and watch as a central basalt table glows along its capillaries, tracing the household path and again pausing at the 8th point. Historians still debate whether these paired seals were a form of inventory system or a symbolic code linking households. Fringe theory claims each pairing was a kind of conversational move in an ongoing ritual game. The glow fades and the air cools. The gallery's side door opens onto a small square where the boundary stones blink left to right, the wheel's 3 slow turns carrying clearly through the paving, not hurrying me, but reminding me that whatever must be set into that final square is not something the city can provide on its own. The square with the blinking boundary stones feels like it is, breathing with me, each pulse of light matching my exhale. The hum underfoot tuned to the wheel's 3-turn rhythm. I cross to a narrow archway carved with bee and wave, the stone cool against my shoulder as I slip through into a lane paved in irregular basalt. Mainstream fact steadies my step. Roman builders often used locally sourced volcanic stone for streets in port cities, both for durability and to display regional identity. Fringe detail says certain street patterns in these stones were laid to echo constellations, visible only from upper stories or rooftops. The lane ends at a bronze door engraved with the 7 household symbols arranged in a spiral toward the eye. I press the bronze eye into its center and the door swings inward to a small circular room lit by a single shaft of light from above. 7 niches line the wall, each holding a different household token: a loaf, a key, a coil, an amphora, a mirror, a laurel branch, and an empty palm-shaped depression. I set the golden grain into the palm and the floor mosaic, 7 rings with the faint 8th beyond, flares softly. Tracing the sequence to that final point, historians still debate whether such offerings were symbolic payments or part of an actual exchange of goods between allied houses. Fringe theory claims the items acted as placeholders for more abstract debts. The glow fades and the grain remains in the palm, the air warm and still. I take it back and leave through a rear passage into a dock chamber where uphill water hums beneath a keystone of B7 and laurel. The reflection shows the calendar plate, the final square now almost fully illuminated, the grain's image bright at its center. Then the view shifts to the amphitheater boards, the hatch at their center just beginning to open. The image dissolves, and the wheel above turns its 3 slow counts, the sound carrying through stone and water, a reminder that the last night waits just ahead. The dock's hum trails after me as I climb the narrow stair into a lane just wide enough for 1 person, the high walls on either side blotting out most of the bronze light. Mainstream fact steadies my thoughts. Roman urban planning often wove such alleys between insulae to serve as fire breaks and service routes. Fringe detail says some were intentionally disorienting, a civic trick to confuse strangers or contain processions within a desired circuit. The paving shifts from plain stone to herringbone, carrying me toward a doorway framed in laurel and B. Inside, a modest chamber holds a basalt table with its capillaries already faintly lit, tracing the sequence from laurel to bread to rope to amphora to mirror to eye, and then again halting at that final point. I set the golden grain in the center and the channels glow more brightly than before, the air warming as the path completes itself to the 8th point. For the first time, a soft chime sounding somewhere deep below. Historians still debate whether such signal tones in ancient cities were practical, marking hours, shifts or watch changes or symbolic cues tied to ritual cycles. Fringe theory claims certain tones were meant to trigger actions in distant parts of the city. The table dims, returning the grain to me, and a side door opens onto a short corridor ending in a palm-shaped depression in the floor. I place the bronze eye there and the floor beneath me vibrates, a seam opening to reveal a steep stair dropping into a dock chamber where uphill water hums. Under a B7 keystone, the reflection shows the calendar plate now fully illuminated, the grain at its center glowing as if lit from within. Then the image shifts to the amphitheater boards, the hatch wide open, the view fading as the wheel turns 3 deliberate counts, the sound heavy with the weight of the week's last night. The wheel's rhythm feels slower now, not from fatigue but from ceremony, each turn separated by a pause long enough to notice the faint scent of fennel riding the air. I follow it through a lane paved with the soft dips of centuries-old basalt toward the amphitheater. Mainstream fact steadies me. Roman amphitheaters often had hypogeum, underground networks of lifts, cages, and corridors that allowed rapid changes in scenery or the release of animals and performers. Fringe detail says in certain cities these underworks were adapted for civic rituals once the spectacles ended, the architecture repurposed without altering its symbolic weight. I step inside to find the arena boards already warm, the hatch at their center open, a narrow stair spiraling down into the dim underbelly. The air here is cooler, threaded with that not oil scent, The walls lined with niches, each holding a household token: bread, key, coil, amphora, mirror, laurel, and at the end, a pedestal shaped like an open palm. I placed the bronze eye into it, and the floor mosaic, 7 rings with the faint 8th beyond, glows fully for the first time, tracing the path without hesitation. The pedestal warms, cools, and returns the eye. Historians still debate whether such cycles were meant to culminate in a physical exchange or whether the act of returning the token was the entire point. Fringe theory claims the ritual's purpose was to remind participants of the balance between what is kept and what is spared. I climb back to the boards where the calendar plate now appears inset into the wood, the final square no longer blank but filled with the grain's likeness, its glow fading slowly as the wheel turns. 3 final counts, the sound deep and sure. I step away as the hatch closes behind me, the bronze light above softening at the edges, the city's hum lowering into something closer to a whisper, streets narrowing into memory, courtyards dimming into dream, until all that remains is the quiet sense that both of us, city and guest, have kept our part of the bargain.